Alright, with Temtem now out in full access, I figured now was as good a time as any to explore the breeding system and all of its caveats because, oh boy, there's a bunch to discuss, and in many ways the breeding system can seem daunting at a first glance, even if you're coming from Pokemon, as there are many aspects that are different here. That said, I'm going to explain the system in great detail, discussing mechanics such as fertility, single values, the DNA strand items, Mimit's role in breeding, and more. By the end of this video, you should have a thorough understanding of the system and be ready to start experimenting yourself. So with all that said, don't forget to subscribe for more Temtem content, and let's dive right in. Okay, so the breeding center can be found on the second island, aka Amnesia, on this spot on the map. Now, a few things of note. Firstly, unlike Pokemon, Temtem do not require steps in order to hatch, but instead are based off of a specific timing, which is different depending on the egg. There is an item that will let you track this time, which we'll get into in a bit. But first, we're going to start with the basics here and discuss single values, or SVs for short, which in essence are the individual values that make up a Temtem's stat potential and can be viewed at any time in the summary screen. Each stat has an associated SV, making for a total of 7. These range from 1 to 50, with 50 being the ideal maximum for any given stat. If you've played Pokemon, these are basically just IVs with a 7th stat for stamina. When breeding, you're going to need to look for your desired Temtem with various 50s in one or more of their SVs in the wild, or just buy them in the trading house because people will sell them. Anyways, when it comes to breeding, unlike Pokemon where you have these arbitrary egg groups and basically need to look up what to breed on Bulbapedia, Temtem streamlines the system by making it so that any two Temtem of the opposite gender that are sharing a type can breed with one another. Simple as that. If your Schween is crystal and water, it can breed with a Valash who's crystal neutral, because they share that crystal typing. When breeding two Tems together, the offspring will always be the same species as the female and the first form of that line. The exception to this, however, is in relation to the Temtem Mimit, who, much like the name suggests, can mimic or transform into any Temtem. It's basically Temtem's version of Ditto. In cases where Mimit is involved, the offspring will be part of the line of the non-Mimit parent. Pretty simple so far, right? Well, it might get a little more confusing once we start discussing fertility and how SVs are passed down, so just bear with me here and feel free to re-listen to any parts of this or ask any questions in the comment if it gets a little bit confusing. I'll do my best to explain though. So, fertility is a mechanic that essentially caps the amount of times you can breed a Temtem so that people don't just infinitely breed to perfects and flood the economy. Fertility is denoted by this tree, which contains a total of 8 maximum. Every time you breed, your Temtem's fertility will go down by 1 until it's empty and can no longer have offspring. Furthermore, not every Temtem will automatically come with full fertility. As you can see here, the higher stats a Temtem has naturally, the less it'll be able to breed. So a Temtem with 1 or 2 SVs of 49 or higher yields a fertility of 7. One with 3 or 4 SVs in that range will have 6 fertility. One with 5 or 6 will have 5. And finally, a Temtem with 7 SVs of 49 or 50 will have a fertility of 4. When creating babies, the offspring will inherit the fertility of the lowest fertility between the two parents after the breeding takes place. So if you have a Temtem that has 8 fertility and another with 4, the offspring will have a fertility of 3 to match the lower parent's new fertility of 3 after breeding. Speaking of inheritance, Temtem can inherit certain moves from parent Temtem when said moves are active, which you can see on the preview screen during the breeding process. Different Tems will get different egg moves, so a great resource for acquiring further knowledge on this can be found on the official wiki linked below. When you get your Temtem together for breeding, SVs are also passed down in a specific way, which can be altered via the use of DNA strands, which we will discuss in a bit, but for now, when breeding with no special held items, it works as follows. Each of the offspring stats have a 40% chance of inheriting the highest SV value between the parents, a 40% chance for the average between the two, and a 20% chance for the lower value. If both Temtem share an SV value, like let's say you have 2 Tems with perfect speed, then it'll always pass down. Regarding ensuring certain stats do in fact pass down, there are a plethora of breeding items called DNA strands, which will aid in this. The DNA strands are to be held by any given Temtem and will bring down certain stats based on which strand you buy. They can all be purchased from the breeding center for convenience as well, and they're as follows. The Vitality strand brings down HP, Endurance brings down stamina, the Lith strand brings down speed, Aggressive strand is for defense, Gifted strands for special attack, and Dominant strand is for special defense. These are of course useful items for ensuring one stat comes down at a time, but there are also some items that bring down 2, which are the Mighty strand for attack and special attack, Immunity for defense and special defense, and Vigor for HP and stamina. You'll notice that speed does not have a corresponding dual strand, which will be an important note when breeding. On a side note, there is a DNA strand for passing down a specific trait because breeding naturally doesn't have an effect on that. Breeding can also affect Luma odds too, but it doesn't do anything naturally unless you possess a Luma Luma of your own. Breeding a Luma with a non-Luma will increase the odds to 1 in 1,000, and breeding 2 Lumas together will bring the odds to 1 in 100. Also of note is the fact that the game also has incubator tickets, which allow you to use the egg incubator in the daycare to speed up the hatching process. There's also corresponding gender incubators, being the X and Y, which can increase the odds of having a male or female respectively. Another useful item, as I mentioned earlier, is the egg timer, which can be obtained by breeding down a Bigu, the pre-evolution to Babawa, that's unobtainable otherwise, and presenting it to this NPC near the airship terminal on Quetzal, and they'll give you the item. With this, it'll actually show you how much time is left on an egg. Definitely nice if you want to AFK for a bit. But yeah, that's essentially the basic building blocks to Temtem breeding. I think it honestly sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is once you get into it, and there is a chart up on the Temtem Wiki if you want to follow that in order to breed yourself some perfects, but I will be going into a step-by-step video guide very soon, which will act as sort of like a part 2 to this. I think it's one thing just to be given a step-by-step guide on how to do something, but it's just as important, if not more so, to actually understand how the system works so that you can take advantage of certain aspects to it that wouldn't necessarily be covered in a simple how to get a 7SV Temtem guide. That said, that's definitely the next step for us, so if you did enjoy this video and want to get notified when that next one comes out, which should be very soon, definitely subscribe to my channel because I put out new monster taming videos every single day. Check out my Discord, my Twitter, and my Patreon, all links below. Special thanks to my patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, and Dark Persona, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.